What's up, everyone? This is my newest acrylic painting that I just finished, and I am very excited about it. You can see I started by just mapping out my characters loosely using a white charcoal pencil to just kind of get a nice flow around the canvas and place these exactly where I wanted. In other videos of mine, you may have seen me project, you may have seen me use transfer paper, but I kind of wanted to just go old school and just make sure that I'm not losing touch with actually drawing things onto a canvas. So this piece was actually a fun one that I drew from my sketchbook. You could see to the right of my painting that I just kind of drew out for fun and wanted to create a painting out of. Once the characters were mapped in with my white charcoal pencil, I went back with an acrylic marker to just kind of fine line everything. And once the acrylic marker was dry, I used a damp paper towel to wipe away all of the excess charcoal pencil. Then it was time to start painting. I did this entire painting using golden fluid acrylics. I really wasn't sure stylistically how crazy I wanted to go with keeping things super rendered or just loose and playful, or I don't know. I guess cartoony or not. So I started by just layering in some background and trying to create some depth to the painting. As the painting evolved, I found that I really enjoyed the style that I came up with, which is typical of my work, to have a little bit more of a detailed, realistic background and then cartoony characters. But you'll see later on, I wasn't sure if I should define it more with line work or not, but once I decided to add line work, I found that the characters popped out a lot more. Things came into the foreground more, and it just looked a little sharper. But we'll get there later. I've always been a fan of creating something that I'm comfortable with, whether it's childhood memories or things that just strike nostalgia or day-to-day life. You can see there's a lot of graffiti influence in my work. Sometimes there's art supplies involved in my work. But for this painting, I think it just kind of reminded me of all the classic Disney movies that I watched growing up, which they often had a very detailed background, and then the characters would be a little more simplified and outlined in the foreground. And speaking of Disney movies, I was always a fan of The Jungle Book and Robin Hood, so the character that is Kaa in The Jungle Book is pretty much the character Sir Hiss in Robin Hood. And I thought it'd be fun to kind of mash this character up with the Cheshire Cat and do my take on it and just see what it looked like. You could see there's lots and lots of layers that I build with my characters. I'm still kind of messing around with paint and experimenting, trying to figure out what I prefer, how to get desired effects that I enjoy. One of the things that I've considered is just maybe doing these quick acrylic backgrounds, but then doing my characters in the foreground with acrylic paint markers just to make them go faster, but they won't have the same detail. There's this level of clarity and sharpness with the paint markers, but sometimes you don't get all the layers of detail with the paint markers. So I'm just trying to still figure that out and just have fun with the paint and just learn what works best for me. And as always, if anyone watching happens to be an artist themselves, please in the comments, let me know what you guys prefer doing in your artwork. Let me know what works for you. We can all learn something together, tips, tricks, whatever works. Just go ahead and leave that in the comments. It's also very funny to watch this playback myself and see all the things I'm doing, because I can see that I'm putting highlights in and then correcting them or going over them or changing them. And I guess that's a good thing about paint, is that you can kind of mess with it and try to experiment and figure out what you think works best. Nothing has to be permanent, but it is so time consuming to just go back and forth and back and forth. So it's fun and stressful all at the same time. I often try to remind myself that as long as I realize something about every painting or learn something along the way, it's worth it. And it's just something to make better in the next piece. It keeps you going on, kind of, at least for me, makes me want to do the next painting and apply something I learned from the last painting in the new one. All right, you can see we are now moving on to the bird character that I drew out. This bird was just something fun from my head. I was kind of influenced by the hood that Maid Marian wears in Robin Hood, and I thought it would be kind of cool to use Robin Hood's colors instead of the purple kind of hood or veil that Maid Marian wears, because there was already enough purple in the snake. So that's something I try to be conscious of, is where I'm placing colors, how things interact, and trying to replay them throughout my work. I didn't really have any set plan for the colors of the bird. This bird was not based off any particular bird. It was, like I said, just something out of my head. So once I started going in with the wings, I decided to kind of base them more of a gray, add some darker tones here and there, make some white highlights on some of the tips of the bird feathers. But as the bird comes to life, I started adding more of the ochres, things like that. I put the hood kind of pointed up to hint that it could have been a cardinal or a blue jay. And so later on, I made the choice to start putting red into the top of the head, and it kind of ended up sort of like a woodpecker. I remember this point of the painting being super fun for me because I was able to thin out the teal that I was using and brush it over parts of the wing and parts of the chest there to just kind of create more separation between the eggs that'll be in the foreground and the bird behind it. Now, I love when the paint cooperates with me. This does not always happen, but I remember having fun here because this was just one of those points where the paint was working in my favor. Do you guys ever get like that? You ever feel like a constant war with the paint where you're like, why wasn't it like it was 10 minutes ago? Why is the consistency different? And I feel like that's especially with acrylics at times, because acrylics have such a quick dry time. So you have to be efficient with the paint that you poured, how much you're mixing in, whether it be matte mediums or other glazing liquids. So there's so many variables. And as I just spoke of a time that I was having fun with the painting, here's where I had to redo a whole section. Now, I know the eggs look pretty decent before, but to me, I just felt like they were a little transparent and light, and there was a lot of the canvas coming through. So I just wanted to continually layer over it, which kind of led to me redoing the eggs completely. But I think you'll see when I'm done with the eggs, this was worth it. It reads a lot better. And I was tempted to leave them alone and keep them on the more realistic side like this, but there wasn't enough separation between the eggs and the bird for me. So for my preference, I just decided later on in the painting, you'll see that I put some line work in to just kind of define them a little more. And although it takes away the realistic element, I feel like it reads better and more clear, but that's a preference. This is just kind of how I work. I find things that I prefer. I use line work to define sections, and I'm not always going for realism. I kind of like things to have some style to them. I like my characters to stand out, and I like people to recognize them. And even if that all sounds very vain, that I want people to recognize my characters, it's true. So at least I'm an honest guy. This is one of the conversations I find myself having a lot more often with artists these days, is that a lot of people are very impressed with how realistic something can look and how someone can replicate something. And I'm impressed by it as well. But to me, I have no idea who did it. There's nothing that stands out about the art or the artist to tell me who did it or what is influenced by that artist, unless someone's always painting, I don't know, just teacups all the time, just teacups. You could be like, hey, that's the person that paints teacups. It's another teacup, which I'll be honest, that sounds kind of boring. I want stuff that has a little more style and story to it that tells me about the artist, that, you kind of see these similarities throughout their work that stand out, so they did it. I hope that makes sense. If you guys get that, let me know. If you feel the same, let me know. If you don't, tell me why. That's fine. We can always have a discussion about this in the comments. So let me know your thoughts on that. Again, that's not discrediting any realism artists. All I'm saying is that I want to see something unique about it that tells me it's a specific artist. Something that stands out that I know that artist does that's a little different. I think that's important in art. I think that's an important part of creation, is putting something that you were influenced by or just a part of you that you put into every piece. I think that that's something that people need to do more often. And trust me, I am aware that you may see my work and think, oh, it's just like this cartoon or that cartoon, or it looks like this artist. And that's okay too. I have been influenced by so many things throughout my lifetime, and I enjoy incorporating those things into my work. I like seeing something that inspired me, trying to change it a little to make it my own. And when you see so many of these things that have influenced a lifetime for you, and you put it into your work, it's really cool to see the outcome and think of all these different things kind of connected and making it more unique and special. For me, it's as simple as growing up and just eating a lot of cereal, seeing all of those super cool characters that were on the box while watching cartoons. It's no wonder I draw the way I do. It's no wonder I think the way I do. I grew up primarily in the 90s. I was born in the 80s, went through the 90s, and there were so many cool characters. So many. Anyways, I went on a bit of a rant. I apologize. But before we get to the end of this painting, I want to give a huge shout out to all of my paid Patreon members. Thank you so much. You guys rock. And of course, if anyone from home watching wants to help support as well, you can head on over to the link in the description of this video and join my Patreon there. Another way to help support, of course, is to head on over to my website, kbuart.com, where I've got plenty of merch available, from prints to original artwork. I've got some t-shirts available, so be sure to check it out and get yourself something today. I will try my best to get prints of this piece done, but for now, let's check it out and take a look at the final outcome.